The first time Eddie Hill stepped into the cockpit of a dragster, no one could have predicted the impact he would leave on the sport of drag racing. Yet those who witnessed it knew immediately that they were watching something extraordinary. In the dusty, sun-baked strips of California, in the late 1960 seconds, Hill was a young man with a fire in his eyes and an unshakable obsession with speed. He wasn't born into fame or pedigree. He didn't have the sponsorship dollars, glossy magazine covers, or media attention that many of his contemporaries enjoyed. What he had instead was an unrelenting determination, raw talent, and an uncanny ability to understand the language of engines, tires, and asphalt in a way that few could. From the very first pass, Hill's presence was magnetic. Mechanics, fellow racers, and spectators alike would hold their breath as he launched down the quarter mile. The roar of the engine ripping through the air like a living thing, tires screaming and smoke curling into the bright California sky. There was a rhythm to his driving, a precision that made even the most powerful machines feel like extensions of his own body. What set Eddie apart wasn't just his skill behind the wheel, it was his vision. While other drivers were content to follow established methods, Hill had a mind for innovation, constantly experimenting with chassis setups, fuel mixtures, and aerodynamics in ways that pushed the boundaries of what the sport believed was possible. Every adjustment, every tweak, every risk he took was calculated, yet executed with an instinctive precision that seemed almost supernatural. In the pits, he was quiet but commanding, a man whose presence demanded attention without words. Crew members respected him not just for his skill, but for his understanding of machinery, his ability to foresee potential issues before they arose, and his relentless drive to extract every ounce of performance from his dragster. Hill's rise was not without struggle. He faced obstacles that would have discouraged most racers: limited funding, a lack of industry connections, and skepticism from those who dismissed his methods as reckless or unorthodox. Yet every challenge only seemed to fuel him further. Where others saw impossibility, Hill saw opportunity. Where they hesitated, he pressed forward. And on the track, that translated into a series of performances that left crowds gasping and competitors scrambling to keep up. By the early 1970 seconds, Eddie Hill was already turning heads. His runs were not just fast, they were frighteningly precise, exhilarating, and most importantly, groundbreaking. He was setting times that challenged the records of established champions, yet somehow the wider world rarely took notice. Media coverage was minimal, sponsorships were limited, and many fans only knew his name in passing. But for those who followed the sport closely, the truth was undeniable. Eddie Hill was faster than many of the legends of the day. A man whose talent and daring often went uncredited, but whose presence on the strip could not be ignored. What made him remarkable was the combination of fearlessness and intellect. Hill understood that raw courage alone could not make a champion. It took brains, precision, and an intimate knowledge of the car's mechanics. Every launch, every shift, every cornering maneuver was executed with calculated risk, and yet it always carried a sense of inevitability, as if the car itself was an instrument responding to the mind of a master. And while the sport celebrated names that would fill headlines and garner trophies, Eddie Hill quietly accumulated a body of work that would influence racers and engineers for decades. His innovations in chassis design, engine tuning, and aerodynamic modifications were quietly studied and replicated by others, even if Hill himself remained largely forgotten by the mainstream. By the end of that first era, as the engines cooled and the smoke dissipated into the California dusk, it was clear to anyone paying attention that Eddie Hill was not merely another driver, he was a phenomenon. A man whose combination of skill, daring, and intelligence made him faster than legends, and whose legacy demanded recognition, even if the world was slow to grant it. By the mid-1970 seconds, Eddie Hill had become a figure of quiet reverence, among the drag racing community, a man whose talent on the strip was undeniable, even if the wider public had yet to catch on. While other drivers basked in sponsorship dollars, glossy magazine covers, and the accolades of the racing press, Hill operated largely in the shadows. His brilliance recognized primarily by those who had the privilege of witnessing it firsthand. His name might not have been splashed across headlines, but on the asphalt, in the roar of engines and the smell of burning rubber, there was no mistaking his presence. Every run he made was a masterclass in precision, instinct, and fearlessness. Unlike many of his peers who relied on conventional techniques and established formulas, Hill approached the sport as both an artist and a scientist. He analyzed every element of the car, from engine timing to fuel delivery, from chassis stiffness to tire traction, obsessively tuning each component until it performed in perfect harmony with his driving style. But it wasn't just mechanical skill that set him apart. It was vision, a rare ability to see possibilities where others saw limitations. Hill's intuition told him how a car would react under stress, how the weight shifted during a launch, how the engine would respond to the tiniest adjustment in carburetor settings. This intuition, honed over countless hours in the garage and on the strip, gave him an edge that few could match. On race days, the spectacle of Eddie Hill in action was unforgettable. The engines roared like thunder, flames spat from the headers, and smoke curled and twisted in the sunlight as tires gripped the asphalt with a ferocity that seemed almost alive. Fans held their breath, feeling every vibration, every rumble, every blast of raw power, while rival drivers stared in disbelief as Hill's car surged down the quarter mile with a precision and speed that defied expectation. Each launch was a delicate dance of timing and nerve. Too much throttle too soon could send the car into uncontrollable wheel spin. Too little could cost valuable hundredths of a second. Hill navigated these risks with uncanny calm, shifting gears with surgical precision, controlling the monstrous machines as if they were extensions of his own body. The beauty of his racing was in this combination of power and control, danger and mastery, chaos and discipline. Yet, despite all of his achievements, Eddie Hill faced a frustrating reality. Recognition and fame often eluded him. Mainstream media and racing magazines frequently focused on drivers with sponsorships, television appearances, or marketable personalities, leaving Hill's groundbreaking performances largely unacknowledged. While other racers were celebrated for victories that were sometimes less impressive, Hill's repeated runs that challenged or shattered existing records were treated as curiosities, anecdotes, or footnotes. It was a bitter paradox, the man faster than the legends, yet largely invisible to the broader world. But this did not diminish his determination. If anything, it fueled him. Hill's motivation came not from trophies or publicity, but from a relentless pursuit of speed, a desire to master the machines and the strip, and the satisfaction of seeing what others believed impossible become reality under his control. Mechanics and fellow racers recognized this, and within the racing community, his influence grew. Ideas and techniques pioneered by Hill were quietly adopted. Innovations in engine tuning, chassis setup, and aerodynamics trickled through the sport, impacting future generations of racers who would eventually push drag racing into new realms of speed and performance. And so, even as mainstream attention remained elusive, Eddie Hill quietly built a legacy. With every tire-scorching launch, every record-smashing quarter mile, and every machine perfected in his garage, he cemented his place among the greats, not always recognized, but impossible to ignore for those who truly understood the craft. By the end of each day at the strip, as the engines cooled and the smoke drifted into the fading light, Hill stood beside his car, helmet in hand, eyes reflecting the satisfaction of a man who had proven, time and again, that he could outpace the legends, innovate beyond expectation, and leave a mark on drag racing that would endure long after the cheers faded. By the late 1970 seconds, Eddie Hill had become a quiet force in drag racing, a man whose reputation for speed, precision, and mechanical genius was whispered about in garages and pits long before it was written in the record books. Unlike many of his contemporaries who chased fame, sponsorship, and media attention, Hill's focus remained singular. He wanted to go faster than anyone else, to push machines to their limits, and to master every nuance of a sport that demanded instinct, courage, and intellect in equal measure. Each dragster he touched became an extension of himself, meticulously tuned to respond to the slightest input, every system calibrated to perfection, every component scrutinized for performance gains that could shave precious fractions of a second off a run. Mechanics who worked with him often marveled at his obsessive attention to detail. Late nights in dimly lit garages were routine, filled with the rhythmic clank of tools, the smell of gasoline and oil, and the hum of engines being tested and retuned. Every adjustment from carburetor jets to ignition timing, from chassis stiffness to weight distribution, was executed with a purpose, a vision of how it would improve performance once the lights dropped and the engines roared. But Eddie Hill's brilliance was not limited to technical expertise. It was in his approach to racing itself, a combination of fearlessness, calculated risk, and almost instinctive understanding of speed and motion. When he launched a car down the quarter mile, it wasn't just power that propelled him. It was timing, anticipation, and an intimate knowledge of how the machine, the tires, and even the track would respond. Every vibration, every sound, every visual cue informed his actions, allowing him to extract performance that others could only dream of. And yet, for all this skill, Hill's accomplishments were often overlooked outside the racing community. Mainstream coverage of drag racing in newspapers and magazines focused on more marketable stars, drivers with sponsorship deals, television appearances, or flamboyant personalities. Hill, with his quiet intensity and relentless pursuit of speed, didn't fit the mold of the celebrity racer. He became a legend whispered about in garages and pits, respected by fellow racers and engineers, but largely unknown to casual fans and the media. Despite this, his influence was profound. Other drivers studied his techniques, engineers examined his innovations, and fans who witnessed his runs carried the memory of his machine's blistering acceleration, the roar of his engines, and the streaks of flame trailing from his headers. He was a man who raced faster than the champions, yet remained unheralded, a paradox that only added to the mystique surrounding him. And in the midst of this, Eddie Hill never wavered. Recognition, fame, and accolades were inconsequential. What mattered was mastery, mastering engines, mastering the strip, mastering the delicate balance between speed and control. Every successful run was a personal triumph, a validation of the hours spent in the garage, the late nights poring over engines, and the countless experiments that had refined both machine and driver. Race after race, Hill demonstrated that brilliance did not always require publicity, that audacity and intelligence could outpace fame, and that a driver could shape history without the world noticing at first. By the end of each day at the strip, as the engines cooled and the smoke rose into the fading sunlight, Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the asphalt with quiet pride. He had raced faster than the legends, innovated beyond expectation, and inspired those who truly understood the sport. And though history had yet to fully recognize him, Eddie Hill had already secured his place among the greats, a forgotten champion whose speed, skill, and genius demanded respect from anyone willing to pay attention. By the early 1980 seconds, Eddie Hill had begun to establish a reputation not just as a talented driver, but as one of the most innovative and daring engineers in drag racing history. Every car he built or tuned carried the mark of his mind, a combination of raw mechanical brilliance, meticulous attention to detail, and a fearless willingness to challenge conventional thinking. Unlike many racers, who were content to follow established norms or rely solely on power, Hill approached each vehicle like a puzzle, carefully analyzing how every component interacted under the extreme stresses of high-speed acceleration. His twin-engine experiments had already captured the imagination of fans, mechanics, and competitors alike. But Hill's work went far beyond spectacle. He constantly sought improvements in chassis rigidity, suspension geometry, and engine tuning that allowed him to extract maximum performance without compromising control. Each car was a laboratory, and each pass down the quarter mile was a data point in his never-ending pursuit of perfection. On race day, the spectacle of Eddie Hill in action was unlike anything most fans had ever seen. Engines thundered to life, filling the air with a vibration that could be felt in the chest. Flames spat from the headers, tires screeched and clawed at the asphalt, and clouds of smoke rolled into the stands as the car accelerated with terrifying precision. To the casual observer, it might have seemed chaotic or even dangerous, but to those who understood the craft, every movement, every shift, every ounce of acceleration was the result of calculation, instinct, and experience. Hill's ability to remain calm under pressure was legendary. At the starting line, with engines screaming and flames licking from the headers, most drivers would feel their hearts pounding, but Eddie had the rare gift of translating adrenaline into control. His hands moved instinctively on the wheel, his foot balanced perfectly on the throttle, and his mind anticipated every reaction of the car long before it occurred. Mechanics and crew members often described him as possessing a kind of sixth sense, a near supernatural understanding of how to push a machine beyond conventional limits without inviting disaster. And yet, for all this mastery, Eddie Hill remained largely overlooked by the broader racing world. Media coverage favored flashy personalities, drivers with sponsorships, and those who fit the mold of the celebrity racer. Hill, quiet, intensely focused, and driven by obsession rather than fame, did not fit that mold. His accomplishments, which included breaking speed records, pioneering new engine configurations, and consistently outperforming more celebrated contemporaries, were often treated as footnotes or curiosities. Still, this lack of mainstream recognition never slowed him down. If anything, it fueled his determination. Hill had learned early in his career that true mastery and respect in the racing world came not from applause or headlines, but from the undeniable results on the strip and the quiet admiration of those who understood the craft. By pushing machines further than anyone else, innovating relentlessly, and executing flawless runs under conditions that would intimidate most, Eddie Hill commanded a respect that transcended trophies or magazine covers. Even as younger racers emerged and technology advanced, Hill's presence remained formidable. His knowledge of engines, aerodynamics, and vehicle dynamics allowed him to adapt, innovate, and maintain his edge in a sport that constantly evolved. Fans who were fortunate enough to witness his runs remembered them for a lifetime. The smell of burning rubber and nitromethane, the deafening roar of engines, the streak of flames, and the poise of a driver who seemed perfectly attuned to the violent power of his machine. By the end of the day, as the strip quieted and engines cooled, Eddie would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the asphalt with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had once again proven that skill, intelligence, and courage could outperform fame, money, and recognition. Hill's career was a testament to the idea that the fastest, most innovative drivers do not always receive the credit they deserve, but their influence, their daring, and their genius leave an indelible mark on the sport that cannot be ignored by those who truly understand it. Eddie Hill was one of those rare men, faster than the legends, a master of machines, and a forgotten hero whose legacy demanded to be remembered. By the mid-1980 seconds, Eddie Hill had already established himself as a phenomenon in the world of drag racing. Yet he remained curiously absent from the mainstream spotlight. While other drivers were celebrated on magazine covers, adorned with sponsorships, and feted in headlines, Hill's brilliance was quietly recognized in garages, pits, and among the small but devoted circle of fans who truly understood the mechanics, skill, and daring required to dominate the strip. Every car he touched was a statement, a carefully tuned machine crafted with obsessive attention to detail and designed to extract every ounce of performance possible. Hill was a perfectionist in the truest sense, blending mechanical knowledge with instinct and experience in a way few drivers could replicate. Each race day was a test, not just of speed, but of intellect, nerve, and precision. When he climbed into the cockpit, he brought more than courage. He brought a complete understanding of how the car would behave under extreme acceleration, how the tires would bite the asphalt, and how the engine would respond to every subtle input. The roar of his engines was unmistakable, a symphony of power, precision, and raw energy that electrified the track and left spectators both awestruck and anxious. Flames erupted from the headers, smoke curled in thick clouds, and tires screamed as they fought for traction. Yet Eddie controlled every element with calm, deliberate mastery. Mechanics who worked with him often remarked on his unique ability to anticipate problems before they occurred, to sense shifts in balance, vibrations, or engine response that others might miss entirely. This intuition allowed him to take risks that would terrify most drivers, yet execute them with a level of control that made the impossible look routine. Despite these skills, the broader racing world continued to overlook him. Media attention remained focused on flashier personalities, those with sponsorship dollars and polished images, leaving Hill's groundbreaking performances and record-setting runs largely unreported. But recognition was never what motivated him. His obsession was with speed, precision, and mastery. He measured success not in trophies or headlines, but in hundredths of seconds, in flawless launches, and in the visceral thrill of a perfectly executed run. Hill's career was built on this quiet determination, a relentless drive to outpace everyone around him and innovate beyond the accepted limits of drag racing. He constantly experimented with engines, chassis, and aerodynamics, often pioneering techniques that would later become standard, but were considered radical at the time. Twin-engine setups, advanced fuel management, and intricate suspension adjustments were just a few of the innovations that bore his mark. Fellow racers, even those who competed against him, often acknowledged his genius. Many tried to replicate his methods, but few could match the instinctive understanding and precise execution that made Eddie Hill a threat to the legends of the sport. Every run was a lesson, a demonstration of the delicate balance between courage, intellect, and skill. And yet, Hill remained grounded. Fame and accolades did not define him, mastery did. Every pass down the quarter mile reinforced his reputation among those who mattered: mechanics, engineers, and insiders who understood the extraordinary combination of daring and brilliance required to tame machines of such violent power. By the end of each day, as the engines cooled and the smoke lifted into the fading light, Eddie Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the asphalt with quiet satisfaction. He had raced faster than the legends, pushed the boundaries of machinery and human capability, and left an indelible mark on the sport, even if mainstream recognition lagged behind. For those who truly understood drag racing, Hill was not forgotten. He was a master, a pioneer, and a man whose legacy of speed, precision, and audacity would inspire generations of racers to come. Every roar of his engine, every flawless launch, and every record-breaking run was proof that greatness does not always come with applause, but it cannot be denied. By the late 1,980 seconds, Eddie Hill had reached a point in his career where his skill, innovation, and daring were undeniable, yet the recognition he deserved still remained elusive in the eyes of the mainstream media. While other racers accumulated trophies, sponsorships, and magazine features, Hill continued to operate with the singular focus that had defined his entire career, the relentless pursuit of speed, precision, and perfection on the drag strip. For him, every car was a canvas, every engine a symphony of controlled chaos, and every pass down the quarter mile a test of mind, body, and machine. Hill's cars were notorious in the pits long before they ever left the starting line. Mechanics and fellow racers alike would gather to watch him adjust, tweak, and fine-tune every component, from fuel mixture to ignition timing, from suspension geometry to tire pressure. Nothing was left to chance. He understood that at the speeds he demanded, a seemingly minor miscalculation could result in catastrophe, yet he handled these risks with an uncanny calm. His reputation as a fearless, almost supernaturally skilled driver was matched only by his reputation as a meticulous engineer, a man whose mechanical intuition allowed him to see potential in machines that others considered untouchable. On race day, the spectacle of Eddie Hill's performance was unforgettable. Engines roared to life with a vibration that could be felt deep in the chest. Flames leapt from the headers, and thick clouds of smoke curled into the stands as tires clawed desperately at the asphalt. The raw sensory overload, the sound, the smell, the heat, created a tension that left spectators on edge, hearts pounding as they watched a man seemingly dancing on the razor's edge of danger and brilliance. Every launch, every shift, every precise maneuver through the quarter mile was executed with a combination of instinct and calculation that few could comprehend. While many drivers relied on repetition and brute force, Hill integrated intuition, analysis, and a deep understanding of his machine, allowing him to perform feats that seemed impossible to outsiders. And yet, despite his extraordinary accomplishments, Hill remained largely invisible to the public eye. Magazine features, television coverage, and sponsorship deals gravitated toward drivers with flashier personas or more media-friendly stories, leaving Hill's remarkable achievements largely in the background. He became a legend whispered about in pits and garages, a name that inspired awe among those who had seen his precision, speed, and daring firsthand, but one that remained obscure to casual fans. But this lack of recognition never slowed him down. If anything, it drove him further. Hill's focus was on mastery, not applause. Each perfectly executed run, each car refined to perfection, each record challenged or broken was validation enough. He measured success not by the size of the crowd or the number of headlines, but by the harmony of man and machine, by the flawless execution of a plan that others deemed impossible. His innovations quietly influenced the sport. Twin-engine configurations, aerodynamic improvements, and intricate mechanical adjustments pioneered by Hill became benchmarks for other racers, even if few gave him credit. His daring style, unmatched speed, and meticulous preparation set new standards, forcing competitors to evolve or fall behind. And through it all, Eddie Hill remained humble, grounded, and singularly focused. He knew that greatness was measured not by fame, but by the impact one left on the sport, the machines perfected, and the examples set for future racers. As the engines cooled and the smoke lifted at the end of each race day, Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the asphalt with quiet satisfaction. He had raced faster than the legends, pushed the boundaries of engineering, and inspired generations without ever seeking the spotlight. Eddie Hill's legacy was not measured in headlines or accolades, but in every roar of the engine, every flawless launch, and every record that bore his indelible mark, ensuring that those who truly understood drag racing would never forget the man who was faster than the legends and too brilliant to be ignored. By the early 1990 seconds, Eddie Hill had evolved from a rising talent into one of the most formidable and innovative drag racers the sport had ever seen. Yet the irony of his career remained. He was faster than many of the legends, yet largely absent from the public's imagination. While other drivers basked in the glow of fame, sponsorships, and magazine covers, Hill's name circulated quietly among insiders, respected but seldom celebrated. His focus was never on accolades. It was on speed, precision, and the meticulous orchestration of machine and man. Every vehicle he raced bore the mark of his genius, a combination of obsessive engineering, instinctual driving, and fearless daring that produced performances few could match. Hill's garages were laboratories of innovation, spaces filled with the scent of gasoline and oil, the rhythmic clang of wrenches on metal, and the low hum of engines being tested and refined. Here, ideas were born, adjusted, and tested relentlessly. Suspension setups were tweaked, fuel mixtures optimized, and chassis geometries refined until each car performed in perfect harmony with his driving style. To Eddie, the machine was not merely a tool. It was an extension of himself, a partner in a high-speed ballet that required absolute trust and synchronization. Race days were the culmination of this relentless preparation. From the moment the engine ignited, the strip became a stage for his mastery. Flames erupted from the headers, tires screamed against the asphalt, and smoke curled in twisting clouds into the bright sunlight, all while Hill controlled every detail with an almost superhuman precision. Spectators held their breath, feeling every vibration in their chests, every tremor of the asphalt beneath them, every roar of raw, unbridled power that seemed almost alive. Hill's ability to harness that power, to convert chaos into controlled velocity, was what set him apart. Fellow racers often said he seemed to anticipate every reaction of his car, every shift of weight, every nuance of acceleration, before it even happened. This intuition, combined with obsessive preparation, allowed him to take risks that most drivers would never dare, and execute them with flawless execution. And yet, despite these feats, mainstream recognition continued to elude him. Media coverage gravitated toward personalities and stories that were more marketable, leaving Hill's extraordinary accomplishments relegated to whispers in the pits or footnotes in race programs. But Hill never minded. Fame had never motivated him. The thrill of speed, the satisfaction of perfecting a machine, and the knowledge that he had pushed the boundaries of what was possible were rewards far greater than any trophy or headline. His innovations quietly shaped the sport. Techniques he pioneered in engine tuning, chassis adjustments, and aerodynamic refinement spread through the racing community, influencing countless racers who followed. He had become a benchmark, a standard that others measured themselves against, whether they realized it or not. And through it all, Hill remained resolute, humble, and single-minded. He did not seek the spotlight. He sought mastery. Every pass down the strip, every squeal of tires, every explosion of speed was a testament to a man who had dedicated his life to being faster, smarter, and more daring than the rest. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon and the engines cooled, Eddie Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the asphalt with quiet pride. He had raced faster than the legends, challenged conventional thinking, and left an indelible mark on the sport. While history had not yet fully recognized his genius, those who truly understood drag racing, the mechanics, the drivers, the engineers, and the fans who had witnessed his brilliance knew that Eddie Hill's name would forever be etched in the fabric of the sport. A forgotten champion who had raced beyond the limits of his era and left a legacy impossible to ignore. By the mid-1990s, Eddie Hill had solidified a reputation among the inner circles of drag racing as a driver whose skill, courage, and innovation were unmatched. Yet the wider world still largely overlooked him. While other racers had media teams, sponsorships, and public recognition, Hill remained an enigma, a man whose performances spoke louder than any headline ever could. His career had been a study in mastery. Every car he touched, every engine he tuned, every setup he tested was a testament to obsession, intelligence, and fearless ambition. Hill's genius lay not just in his ability to drive fast, but in his ability to understand the complex language of machines, translating vibrations, engine notes, and track conditions into actionable adjustments that pushed performance to the limit. Each race day began long before the engines fired. In the quiet hours of the morning, Hill and his crew would methodically inspect every part of the car, checking for minute imperfections that could shave crucial fractions of a second from a run. Suspension angles were measured, tire pressures adjusted, carburetors fine-tuned, and fuel mixtures analyzed with painstaking precision. While other drivers might rely on instinct alone, Hill combined instinct with meticulous preparation, turning each car into an extension of his mind and body. When he finally climbed into the cockpit, the world outside disappeared. The roar of engines, the smell of nitromethane, and the crackle of burning rubber became part of his focus, a symphony of controlled chaos that he commanded with surgical precision. As the lights dropped, the car launched with a violent, almost terrifying energy, tires gripping the asphalt, flames licking from the headers, and the crowd collectively holding its breath. Hill's hand movements, throttle control, and timing were flawless, the culmination of years of study, practice, and fearless experimentation. Fellow racers watched with a mixture of awe and disbelief, realizing that they were witnessing someone who could consistently outpace legends and push machines beyond what they thought possible. And yet, despite this dominance, Hill's accomplishments remained underappreciated. Media outlets rarely gave him the coverage he deserved, and mainstream audiences were unaware of the sheer brilliance he displayed every time he fired up a car. But recognition had never motivated him. Fame was transient. Mastery was permanent. Each flawless run, every record-setting pass, and each mechanical innovation was proof that he had achieved what few could even attempt. His influence quietly permeated the sport. Engineers studied his setups, drivers emulated his techniques, and mechanics tried to replicate his obsessive attention to detail. Hill's impact on drag racing extended far beyond the records he set. It was woven into the very practices and principles that would shape the next generation of racers. And yet, Eddie remained humble, grounded in the knowledge that speed was a fleeting thing, one that required constant vigilance, innovation, and courage. Every pass down the quarter mile reminded him that mastery was not a destination, but a journey, one that demanded total commitment and an intimate understanding of both machine and self. As the sun set and the engines cooled, Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the track with quiet satisfaction. He had raced faster than the legends, engineered machines that defied expectation, and thrilled fans without ever seeking the spotlight. Though his name might not have been emblazoned in magazines or plastered on billboards, Eddie Hill's legacy was undeniable, etched into every record, every innovation, and every memory of those fortunate enough to witness his brilliance. He was, in every sense, the forgotten hero of drag racing, faster than the legends, smarter than most, and unforgettable to those who understood what it truly meant to master the strip. By the late 1990 seconds, Eddie Hill had become something of a legend within the tight-knit world of drag racing, even if the broader public remained largely unaware of his extraordinary accomplishments. For those who had followed his career, Hill was more than a driver. He was a master craftsman, an innovator, and a fearless competitor whose relentless pursuit of speed had consistently placed him ahead of the legends of the sport. Every machine he raced carried the mark of his genius: painstakingly tuned engines, meticulously adjusted suspensions, and aerodynamic tweaks that allowed him to harness raw power with unprecedented precision. Hill's approach was methodical yet instinctual, combining obsessive preparation with an almost intuitive understanding of how his car would behave under the violent forces unleashed on the strip. Each race was an experiment, a test of courage, intelligence, and skill, where the smallest miscalculation could have disastrous consequences. On race day, the atmosphere around Hill's car was electric. Fans, mechanics, and fellow racers could feel the anticipation crackling in the air as he climbed into the cockpit, the engines revving like thunder, ready to break loose. Flames danced from the headers. Thick clouds of smoke curled skyward, and the tires screamed against the asphalt as Hill launched with precision that seemed almost impossible to achieve. The crowd watched, hearts pounding, as his car surged down the quarter mile with breathtaking speed, controlled chaos, channeled into flawless execution. Hill's genius was evident not only in his speed, but in his ability to maintain complete command over machines that would have overwhelmed most drivers. Fellow racers often remarked on his almost supernatural ability to anticipate the car's reactions, to feel its shifts in weight, its grip, its vibrations, and to adjust in real time with split-second decisions. This combination of intellect, courage, and intuition made him a driver who could consistently outperform competitors who were better funded, better publicized, or more celebrated. Yet despite his dominance on the strip, mainstream recognition remained elusive. Magazine covers went to drivers with larger personalities or bigger marketing budgets, and television coverage favored the flashier stars. Eddie Hill's extraordinary feats were often relegated to whispers in the pits, fleeting mentions in race programs, or anecdotal recollections from those who had witnessed them firsthand. But Hill's focus was never on accolades. He sought mastery, the perfect run, the flawless synchronization of man and machine, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had achieved something few could ever imagine. This relentless pursuit of excellence also made him a pioneer. Techniques and innovations he developed, whether in engine tuning, weight distribution, or chassis dynamics, quietly influenced the sport, shaping the approaches of other drivers and engineers, often without them realizing the origin of these ideas. Hill's legacy was thus twofold: the spectacular performances that thrilled fans and defied physics, and the enduring impact of his technical genius on the evolution of drag racing. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon and the engines cooled, Eddie Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the strip with the quiet pride of a man who had raced faster than the legends, engineered machines beyond imagination, and left an indelible mark on a sport that had largely failed to recognize him. He was the forgotten hero, a master of speed and innovation, whose legacy endured not in headlines, but in the hearts, memories, and minds of those who truly understood the brilliance and audacity it took to dominate the drag strip. Hill had proven, time and again, that true greatness was measured not by fame or applause, but by mastery, courage, and the enduring influence one leaves on the sport they love. By the turn of the millennium, Eddie Hill's career had spanned decades, yet the paradox of his legacy remained. He had consistently outpaced the legends of drag racing, revolutionized the sport with his innovations, and thrilled fans with performances that bordered on the unbelievable. Yet mainstream recognition was slow to catch up. While his contemporaries were lauded in magazines, television broadcasts, and sponsorship campaigns, Hill's name often remained a footnote, a whispered legend in garages, pits, and among those who truly understood the nuances of high-speed drag racing. But for Hill, accolades were never the goal. He raced for mastery, for the adrenaline surge of launching a machine calibrated to perfection, and for the satisfaction of knowing he had harnessed the raw power of engines and mechanics in a way few could match. His career had been defined by a relentless pursuit of speed, a meticulous approach to engineering, and an instinctual understanding of the strip that set him apart. Every dragster he built or drove was a testament to obsessive precision. Engines were tuned not just to run, but to perform flawlessly under extreme stress, extracting every ounce of power. Chassis were adjusted for rigidity, weight distribution, and balance, ensuring that the car responded exactly as intended. Suspension geometries were refined through trial and error, each tweak a step toward perfection. Tire pressures, Fuel mixtures, and even the smallest components were meticulously considered, because at the speeds Eddie demanded, minor mistakes could become catastrophic. On race day, the spectacle was unforgettable. Engines thundered to life, flames erupted from the headers, and thick clouds of smoke curled into the air as tires clawed desperately at the asphalt. Spectators could feel the vibration in their chests, smell the acrid tang of burning rubber, and sense the raw energy building as Hill prepared to launch. And then, with a violent yet controlled surge, the car shot down the quarter-mile, every movement executed with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Fellow racers watched in awe, mechanics shook their heads in disbelief, and fans cheered with hearts racing. Hill's talent was not only in speed, but in his ability to command machines that would terrify most drivers. He seemed to anticipate every reaction, every subtle shift in traction, every vibration of the engine, and translate it into precise actions that produced flawless runs. In a sport where hundredths of a second could determine legacy, Hill repeatedly demonstrated that his skill, intuition, and preparation were unmatched. And yet, despite this brilliance, mainstream recognition often remained out of reach. Stories of his record-breaking runs, innovative approaches, and unmatched skill circulated in the racing community, but rarely reached the wider public. But Eddie never wavered. Fame was irrelevant. Mastery was the ultimate reward. Each successful launch, each record set or challenged, each car perfected in his garage was a testament to a life dedicated to excellence. Hill had influenced a generation of racers and engineers without needing the spotlight. His innovations in engine tuning, chassis design, and aerodynamics quietly shaped the sport, setting benchmarks that others aspired to reach. And through it all, Eddie remained grounded. He was not driven by ego or public admiration, but by the thrill of speed, the challenge of mastery, and the knowledge that he had raced faster, smarter, and more innovatively than most of his peers. As the engines cooled and the strip grew silent at the end of each day, Hill would stand beside his car, helmet in hand, surveying the asphalt with quiet pride. He had raced faster than the legends, pushed machines beyond imagination, and left a legacy that would endure in every record, every memory, and every innovation that followed. Eddie Hill, the forgotten hero of drag racing, was a man whose speed, skill, and ingenuity ensured that those who truly understood the sport would never forget him. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the life and career of Eddie Hill, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we'll continue to bring you the untold stories of the men, machines, and moments that defined the golden era of drag racing, celebrating the legends both remembered and forgotten. If you've been inspired by this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us as we dive into more legendary tales from the golden era of drag racing, where courage, speed, and heart collided in ways you'll never forget.